Advisory Committee. And if we could do some quick introductions and be around the table.
Immediate neighbor liaison.
I'm Nicole Matthew at DESC.
And I'm Pete. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm Pete Spalding. And then we have our presenters for the evening behind us. And so, one thing that we would like to do is to make a revision to the agenda prior to approving it, and at the request of our presenters, we're going to do the neighborhood visioning piece before the produce co-op piece, if there are no objections from the committee. So with that change, I guess everybody's looking down, so I'm assuming that that's... Okay. And then we distributed with the agenda, we distributed the meeting summary, the minutes from our last meeting on March the 6th. And were there any additions, corrections, or comments that folks want to make?
I did have one addition that I thought was appropriate. It was the discussion about DESC's reporting to the various reports that it provides to the various, the funders, and then for its facility versus the reports that it provides for its program. I don't know what we call it. For its clinic operations, is that the appropriate word referred to as? Well, I think Cheryl Markham indicated that the county provides funding both for the development of the building, and it also provides funding for mental health operations. And so there's different, just to have it reflected in the meeting minutes that was stated, and that's part of the process, as well as the part about neighbors' concerns about DESC's accountability to the neighborhood and ways that we could potentially, well, I think I just mostly kind of indicated that I thought neighbors had concerns about accountability and how we could in the long term sort of be confident that DESC is going to be good neighbors. So I've got some language, but I'm not married to it, and I don't know if, where it's taking the minutes to the meeting before.
Discussed last time? I remember the issue of accountability coming up, the fact that we discussed that the neighborhood's accountability to sewer government representatives and our principal accountability services in the city. And all of the documents that we presented, but some of the quarterly reports, I'm sure that it's public domain and can be accessed except the front page. That's privileged stuff.
We didn't indicate, I think the discussion was just acknowledging that those reports, or understanding the various reporting aspects that DESC provides. I do think,
So do you have some specific language? Because what I'm thinking is if you wanted to give that to Nicole maybe, and she could use that to attach to the minutes maybe, as an addendum to the minutes. Does anybody have difficulty with that? Okay.
and I'm not married, so I'm not wedded to my marriage as it is.
Did this not come out in a timely in that way that you were mentioning that this is a lot to go over this meeting? This was, I thought, emailed out according to the schedule that we agreed upon.
Yeah, Angela, like I was going to say, Angela's been out of town, so
I was just wondering if we need to send them out soon.
no, I know the answer to that.
Okay.
Jane, did you have any corrections? Okay. So then we can approve everyone agree with that?
I'd like to see it.
Okay. Okay, so we'll tentatively,
Right.
why don't we do this? Why don't we incorporate that in, we'll redistribute the minutes, and then we can vote on them at our next meeting.
I think that's fair.
Does that work for everybody?
That's very fair.
All right. I was looking to see if folks are signed up.
It is difficult to hear the committee. I'm having a hard time hearing what you're talking about, so just a heads up on that.
I'll talk louder.
Okay. So did anyone that signed in want to do public comment? Okay, Patrick?
Do I have to stand up?
I mean, just identify yourself.
My name's my name's Patrick Ware. I have a couple of comments and questions. I understand today you're going over the future agenda items, which I'm happy to hear. I know I mentioned to some of you I wish that would have happened previously, and I'm fine the way it's going. I do have one comment and question about that. My comment in question is twofold. The first is, it seems like, DSC there plays a role in this discussion, but the city of Seattle also has a role in this. And it seems like having a conversation with DSC is only one part of the equation, and the other one is with the city of Seattle. And then the second one is in regards to the questions which I believe are going to move some of the foundation of the agenda items moving forward. The one question I have about that is I don't understand why, pretty much it hasn't been really said until now that basically the reason why the location was selected was primarily because we're poor, because of the tax credits basically giving us a boost because we're a qualified census tract. I don't understand why it's taken the neighborhood to find out that information for us to learn about it. It's almost like the city and DSC has kept that a secret from us, and that is a fact, that the location of the proposed site, DSC site, was selected because it's getting a 30% boost, and that's because it's a poor area. The LIHTC program and the HUD acknowledges that basically their program concentrates poverty. I'm just wondering. So I want that to be an agenda item that's discussed in length. Thank you.
Okay. Comments?
I'd like to let another neighbor go first.
Okay. The only other is Mike. Dave, did you?
Oh, I thought it was just a sign.
Oh, okay.
For mailing.
Yeah, it wasn't
Okay,
clear.
scratch that.
Okay. So, did anyone else not sign in and wanted to make a comment?
I do have comments. I just
Okay.
wanted others to go first. Do you have a comment? I think Austin might have a comment too. Well, I raised this last time. And it says again to limit comments to agenda items, and that feels really confusing to me because I have come with some comments that I would like to bring to the committee's attention that don't relate to the agenda item. So I don't know how that will be resolved. And I'd like to ask the committee to talk about that a little bit more. My comments, keeping them brief, are I would like to request of DESC and for the committee to deliberate about this. Let's see, since you've met last, we did have design review opportunities to be involved as a community, both for design review and for the environmental meeting, which were great processes. I think neighbors who participated in that found that to be a very good process. It's a great opportunity to be involved and interact with this project and with the building that's coming to the neighborhood. I really appreciated it myself. I would like to request the consideration that the architects come back to neighbors to do one final presentation before the master use plans are submitted. I know, having been at the design review meeting, the board there seemed to be a lot of different conversations happening on the design review board, and I don't feel that everything was resolved. Certainly, they did pass the project, and I understand that's the process. A question, for example, was they asked, how can we make this business stand out and say this is a business? There was a concern by the design board that the doors of the building looked like they could potentially be entrances to the residents. How can it, that was a question raised, but I don't think they necessarily found an answer to that. That's just one example. But neighbors raised concerns, just wanting some opportunity to give input on the color of the building or a little bit more on the landscaping, especially in the back of the building. And so I guess I'm asking that there's another opportunity for that conversation so neighbors can help interact and help create a great building for the neighborhood. Along that lines, we had our environmental meeting, but I think most of the concerns raised at that environmental meeting can't be handled by DPD. They don't fall underneath the SEPA, which I have little understanding of myself. It's probably similar to other neighbors, and so how can we talk about some of those concerns that were raised at the environmental meeting in this context? I think is pretty important, not tonight, but in the future at the appropriate times. I think I'd like to just express that I really feel an important need for the decisions this committee makes or the conclusions that this committee comes upon to be made in the public, where everyone can be understanding the process. I know I was privy to a smaller conversation that happened by email that kind of settled the issue about sex offenders. And, I was grateful to be part of that conversation, and it did get resolved, and thank you to Bill for that. But it's a small conversation that's happening by email and isn't then transparent to the whole community, and I feel concerned about that, and I don't know how that transfers to the minutes of this meeting. And so I do ask that decisions and considerations that are made are actually happening at the advisory committee meetings, or at least helping the neighborhood understand how those kinds of decisions are made. Lastly, for a future agenda item, although the sex offender conversation and concern, whatever, has been maybe resolved, I think there are ongoing concerns in neighbors just to understand how background checks are done, what's checked, what's the thinking behind that, and also understanding tenants, what commitment they're asked to make as a tenant and what that looks like. If rules are breaking, how is that? I just think those are questions that neighbors have that just warrant some conversation, so that everyone can understand and have clear information about how this, how the building is run. And so I just ask for that to be an opportunity for a presentation at a later date. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks.
I'll hopefully somewhat quick. My name is Austin Hugel. I live probably, 500 feet from the site. I'm new to this whole thing. I don't have a lot of input other than just the basic facts that I've gathered myself. And as far as being transparent, like she's talking about, I hear things through the West Seattle blog that I find out for myself. But I also see other things going on. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel guilty or nervous about expressing their opinions because there's a lot of anger associated with if we're against what you guys are proposing with the DESC building, we're almost feeling like we should feel guilty because we're against homeless people and this and that. And it's not like that. I live really close, and I got a 1-year-old, and I'm just concerned about my wife and my kid. And I'm sure, and you guys have been maybe involved in other buildings in different neighborhoods and have experienced all these neighbors coming in opposing this because they're concerned about the same exact thing. But to us, this is new, and we're here trying to understand exactly what's going on. Again, like I'm sure this has been brought up before frequently, but the sexual offender thing, you can understand. I have a 1-year-old little boy. He's going to be wandering around little parks, around the sidewalks there, the streets, whatever, and I don't want to be concerned about that. I want to know what's going on. Your filtering process with the people that you bring in, you say they're going to have criminal backgrounds, possibly sex offenders. Until recently, I just heard from the West Seattle blog, and then apparently there was a meeting saying that you proposed that was not going to happen, which is great. But understandable from my end, please. Like I'm grateful that you're trying to help the homeless and everything, but I have these concerns. I just want to make sure that there are transparent so people around here aren't looking on other blogs and sites trying to figure out what's going on when it should be coming from DSC, going to house or emails or mailings or something, letting the people that are living in the direct zone of this building know what's going on. Because maybe there are preconceived notions that don't make sense or that aren't right, that you have different views on, that you could express the facts to more than other than just people trying to dig it up for themselves or come up with it for themselves, you know what I mean? Like my family and I are just sitting in our house going, I don't know what's really happening. I just know there's a big building going in with 66 units and there could be criminals and sex offenders in there. And you can't blame us for feeling like that. And nobody here should be nervous or upset about expressing those feelings to you guys. And you should be open and honest and being presented with open arms saying, yeah, I'm sorry, I know exactly how you're feeling, man. You know, I have a family too, I have kids. Pete, I know you're a big, you stand up for people's rights, human rights and all that stuff. I've blogged you a couple times or whatever, looked you up on the internet. That's admirable, man. I understand that. Nobody's against you. Nobody's against you, Bill. Okay? We're just concerned about our households and our safety, and we shouldn't feel guilty for feeling like that, So, any information up front, honesty, not behind closed doors, no decision-making without the public, the direct public in the direct vicinity of this building that's going in, they should be wary of every single step that's made, every single conversation, who lives like within 500 feet of the building on this council? One person? That's ridiculous. Are you kidding me? So do you have little kids wandering around the little area?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
You don't? I do. How many families do that in a 500-foot radius have little kids that are wondering what's going to happen to them when all these people that you guys are making decisions about go into that building? How do you think they feel? You guys don't know because you're not there. You don't have the kids there. It's easy to be out of sight, out of mind, but when it's affecting you that directly, please put yourself in that position when you're making all these decisions about your neighbors. Okay? Please. Because these neighbors, it's their lives, it's their kids, and if it was going next door to your house, you might feel a little bit differently. Okay? That's all I'm saying.
Did anybody else want to offer public comment? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Sure. I guess what I was going to, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Austin, so?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jane Ackling. I'm the manager for the library here.
Oh, okay.
One thing I was going to offer, because I don't live here, but my staff works right in the city as well, and we share, in a different way, we share many concerns. So as a small gesture, I'd like to offer, we'll put up a public comment box in your review box, but we'll try to keep a record of all the documents that are generated, because it is very confusing. I'm finding this very confusing myself. There are many different forums and many different places that things are posted on the DESC side, on the Alliance side, on the Indians, so it's very confusing. So to the best of my ability, we'll keep a print box at the library where neighbors close to the vicinity can come, and actually look at documents without having to go online, if that will help.
No, that'd be great. And again, guys, I'm not trying to attack anybody.
No,
And I'm not, Pete, I'm not attacking you, Bill, I'm not attacking you, anybody here, I'm not attacking you. Everybody wants to know what's going on. Everybody wants to be represented fairly, too,
And
That's all.
I don't mean to
Yeah.
engage. We're trying to think, I think all of us are concerned about how do we get information out. Then I'm hearing you talk, I'm realizing one of the barriers to that is that not everybody has online access or is on all these email lists. And sometimes just a print copy can be helpful, especially if you're reading this one. So just as a small piece of our agenda, I think we're trying to do that.
Great, thanks.
And if I could offer, if there is another way that we can communicate information, if you will let us know, because we as a collective body with input from others have come upon the process that we have in place right now, and nobody has said that it's a perfect process.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you feel like you are not getting the information that we're discussing here, please let us know. Okay. Let us know how we can get that information.
Even maybe mailings or something. People that that are in a certain vicinity of what's going on. You have the addresses, maybe you don't have the names, but if that could be mailed out. I know some people walk, you know, to house, and I've seen it at my door. And that's how I find about, you know, things here and there. But if there was just mailings, I mean, I know that can't cost that much, and just keep people up to speed with what's going on in the process, and reassuring people that things are okay, it's gonna be okay. You know, that, you know, here's the facts, here's the details on a regular basis. So knowing that things aren't just happening behind their back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you guys are upfront and honest, and we can have our, you know, our comments every now and then, but at least we're informed, at the very least, you know.
And I would like to offer also, and I think that Vanetta is the one that these emails go to, but there is an email address. You want to give one more?
The Lions at ndnc.org.
So in between meetings, if there's something that you hear that you want more information on, if you'll send an email to that, because I know Vanetta monitors it daily for the North Delridge Neighborhood Council, and she'll be happy to give whatever information it is from the committee that, I mean, because we want this to be an open process as well.
Sure. You can also ask DESC, and we have a website out that is an awful lot of information. I was actually reviewing the webpage before this meeting, and I'm sort of amazed about the information that's up there. We've never, in all of our history of doing housing development, quite encountered such an appetite for information, but we'll try to be responsive to it. I think your concern about childhood safety is a perfectly reasonable concern. I think that for people that don't know about the dynamics of homelessness or major psychiatric issues, a project coming to this neighborhood, concern for property values is also a very legitimate concern for neighbors to have. Happily, there are really good answers to those questions. We were never concerned about ruling out sex offenders for this housing project. I think I sort of committed to that in the June meeting, the first meeting that we had, because there are virtually none in the homeless population. It's less than 1%. One of the things that, I have a Superior Court judge on my board of directors, and she handles an awful lot of family law cases. And I was reading in the Seattle Times not too long ago that over 90% of sex offenses against children are committed by primary family members or friends of primary family members. And I found that a really astounding statistic. And I asked Judge Inveen if that was the case, and she said, I've been on the bench for 15 years, I've seen hundreds of cases, and I've never encountered a sex offense against a child that was not committed by a family member or a close friend of the family. So they're not in our population for the most part, and we will screen them out. I mean, we have access to the King County Sheriff's website, and I'm happy to talk about other screening mechanisms, most of which are described on our website that you can go look at. But another offer I'd like to make, if you've got questions or any of your neighbors have questions, email DESC. Info@DESC goes right to Maria, and Maria office right next to me, and she immediately comes to Nicole or me or some other, maybe it's the housing program director that's the best person to answer, maybe it's the clinical program director. But we'll try to turn around and answer for you within a reasonable amount of time. So don't forget, coming to us with your questions is also a very legitimate way to go.
Is there any way we can get a commitment for, like, someone could get an answer within a week or, like, 2 weeks?
You know, it depends. If we're overwhelmed with questions, I don't know whether I can do that or not. A week certainly sounds reasonable. You can't live with it. We'll do the best we can to respond in a timely way.
Well, yeah.
Have you ever not responded to you in a timely way, or Aaron?
Well, I mean, it took 3 months for the list of 30 questions.
It wasn't 30 questions. It was 37 groups of questions. And it was a large document that we had to produce. And yeah, it took that amount of time.
Maybe we could ask for at least an acknowledgement of the question.
Yeah,
within a week,
we can do
if you're
that.
not able to answer.
Depending on how deep and how detailed the question is and how long the answer needs to be, I think a week is a reasonable amount of time. Nicole, Maria, can we commit to that? Responding to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do.
Okay, thanks for your input. Okay, let's move along to our first presenter of the evening, so 3.
I'm going to stand up here, so talk to Pete, he'll start. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. First of all, on February 29th, the North...
I don't know if everybody in the audience knows you.
Everybody know me?
So you might want to introduce yourself and give a little background where you're coming from for those that might not know you.
Thank you. I'm Corinne Hines. I'm one of the co-chairs of the North Delridge Neighborhood Council. I've lived in Delridge for 8 years. Also worked with the Delridge Neighborhoods Development Association for Philadelphia. So I've been thinking about Delridge for quite a while, and living in Delridge and working in Delridge. So, the North Delridge Neighborhood Council and the Delridge District Council sponsored a open house visioning event on February 29th. It was focused on the Brandon Node, which for anyone who's not geekily familiar with the neighborhood plan as I am, along Delridge Way, there are 3 distinct nodes of commercially zoned land. That's the intent of the neighborhood plan, was to sort of focus development in those areas and create neighborhood centers. So the Brandon node is the future DESC project would be part of that. It's about a 2.5 block stretch of land along Delridge Way that's zoned NC 240, which is neighborhood commercial, can go up to 40 feet high. So it's the type of development that's geared towards pedestrian-friendly shops. So ground floor is retail or commercial space of some sort, and the residential above. So we looked at that zone and we invited, specifically focusing on business owners like Brenda and Mark and other folks who own and operate businesses right around there, and some home-based businesses, as well as the community at large, to come in and talk about visions for that space. There are a lot of opportunities. I'm going to pass around. I didn't make a whole bunch of copies in the interest of saving trees, but we had a big one of these maps that sort of charted out all of the existing businesses as well as potential opportunities, one of which is the future ground floor space at the DESC building, and some other empty retail spaces and other spaces that are for lease or for sale. So I'll pass this around. I have a few copies. If anyone, particularly if you don't have access to the internet, feel free to take one. It is posted on the NDNC website. So it's all electronic these days. So we asked a series of questions, sort of focusing on what people wanted to see in the node, how the node could be improved. I'm going to focus, I think, for this meeting on what people wanted to see. And I think maybe future meetings, it might be worth talking about some of the more urban design issues. But just in the interest of saving time so that the produce co-op people have some time. One of the questions we asked is, what types of businesses would you like to see in the Brandon node? And I'll hold this up. I'm sorry those folks in the back probably can't see really well, but food businesses is the huge bar, and non-food businesses is the small bar. And food businesses includes all sorts of things like grocery stores and restaurants, anything dealing with food. But then when you break it into the types of food businesses desired, farmers market and produce stand is the highest ranking, followed by bakery, grocery store, distillery. That's my word. Restaurant, a bundle of basic food stores, a butcher, urban farming, and a deli. So I think there's a lot of interest in different, not only produce and grocery stores, but also some specialty foods that might be destinations. And then if we look at the types of non-food businesses, they're fairly family-focused, I think. The top ranking was a children or clothing consignment store, childcare, laundromat, movie theater, small shops and services, community center with activities for teens, toy lending library, and a greeting card gift flower shop. So some of those little neighborhood stores. And there were a lot of ideas about some of the urban design aspects and the policies and transportation issues that I'm not going to go into. As you can see, there's quite a few more pages. I will also send this around. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to see it online, it is all online. So if you want your very own copy, yes. If you want your very own copy, it's at ndnc.org. But I want to focus some sort of new information that I know a lot of people here haven't seen is an analysis that was done very recently about the viability of a grocery store in Delridge. There have been a lot of organizations working on finding ways to bring healthy food options to Delridge. So I and Amanda, the other co-chair in DNC, went on February 13th to a big, it was kind of a grocery store summit. It kind of became this huge boardroom full of people with all those folks being teleconferenced in and Vanessa's on the phone. And there were some, the analysts were out of town. But they produced this report, which I can also pass around, and I think this would be a great thing to get online, and I don't think it is. So I'm reminding myself right now to get this online. But I'll just do a quick summary of what they found. They identified the issues as being access to affordable, healthy food, and that the neighborhood has a great desire for access to a full-service grocery store. And having worked at DNDA, I heard this for years and years and years that people really wanted the grocery store closer and easier to get to. So the findings from the analysis are that with the current incomes, population density, traffic counts, and proximities to other grocery stores, it doesn't support a standard supermarket in the Delridge area, which I think a lot of us knew. But they did suggest that there were some alternative models that could be viable, although not without challenges. And they listed 5 different examples or opportunities. One was a subsidized supermarket. They had an example of an organization called the Food Trust that's mostly on the East Coast. The second was a small independent grocer. Something like, we might see some of those downtown, or some of those small independent grocers. They listed some that are out of town. A co-op grocer. One of the ones they listed as a model was Madison Market. They listed a mobile market. One of the ones they listed as a model was the stock box model that had a prototype in Delridge for a couple of months. And then enhanced produce offerings at convenience stores. And there actually is a pilot project going on now. If you're not aware, you know that the convenience store on the north end of Delridge Way has fresh food and produce. And there's some other ones throughout that aren't along Delridge Way. So the summary of the key data points, they did this very complex analysis. It's called a retail leakage report, where they look at how much money there is to pay for things. I'll pass it around. Feel free to look at it. If you understand it, tell me. One of the things that it points out is that there is a market. They did mention in their presentation that Delridge is a very difficult location because of the geography. We're kind of this very skinny little neighborhood along Delridge Way, and then there's these steep hills and there's not really good access. And so a lot of the demographics along the valley are lower income than what's up on the hills. So they do the demographic analysis typically in radiuses. And so they're not sure that it's entirely accurate, but they recommend maybe a follow-up at some point. I think you can get more specialized data. So they recommend a follow-up. They say that you definitely need to base the follow-up analysis on the topography. They point out that there are several grocery stores within 2.5 miles. And they say there aren't a lot of suitable sites. They're thinking that you need at least 2 acres. So in terms of what grocers are looking for in a grocery site, they're looking for the appropriate demographics, so enough consumer income to pay for the groceries. They're looking for a suitable site that has the right zoning, the right size. They're looking for good access and visibility, good street visibility, and then they list some potential sales that will be required. It says, what should you be looking for in a grocery operator? And you should be looking for someone who is understanding of the market and responsive locally. Looking for someone who is a professional operation. It says Delridge is not a site for a startup operator without adequate experience or cash reserves. Say physical asset. So it needs to be a very well-designed, beautiful, well-kept, safe, attractive facility. And job opportunities, they say that a savvy operator will plan to hire from the neighborhood. And I think that's most of their analysis. They had a lot more to say. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Did you say that this information can be accessed, it's linked on the NDNC website?
It will be.
Okay. So just for folks that are interested in getting to this data that you've got there.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and hand this around. Feel free to look at it. It's pretty interesting. I think it tells you what we already knew, that grocery stores are hard to build here. So that's a good question. Thank you for bringing me. So this was commissioned by the King County Food and Fitness Initiative, and they convened that big summit. But it was also, the Office of Economic Development, the Department of Neighborhoods, the Office of Sustainability, the WSU, UW, Public Health. And there are a lot of people who are really focusing and putting a lot of serious attention on ways to make this work in Delridge. So it's a pretty exciting meeting. Mike?
Has this been in the works for some time, this particular meeting, or how did it come to fruition?
I think it was. I arrived at the meeting and the woman from KCFFI said, well, this was going to be a small meeting, but Marie kept asking if we could invite more people. So I think because of my background, I knew that a lot of people had already been working. They started talking about it, 6 months ago, maybe. And then the meeting was a little over a month ago.
What were some of the challenges that they mentioned? I know some people in the neighborhood who basically don't even eat vegetables or healthy food. So how are they, with like a co-op or something that sells vegetables? Do they say that challenge would be overcome?
They didn't speak so much in that depth at this meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
We'll reserve the right to come back and ask you some questions after we hear the other piece of the presentation, because they might bring up some questions that they would think of for you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's the person who's going to help us with the project still here?
Yes. So, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Sure.
North Delridge resident and West Seattle lifelong resident, and I'm part of the board for the Delridge Supportive Cooperative.
I'm Galena White, and I lived in Delridge for 4 years. I'm currently sort of on a hiatus in Eastern Washington, but I came to hear about this neighborhood, and especially having fruits and vegetables here, because I experienced an upswing in health after eating a lot of healthy foods. And then I couldn't afford it after like a month. I ran out of money, so I decided that Delridge needed a place for me to buy stuff. And so looks like
We're missing another board member, Ariana Taylor Stanley.
so. This is our little bit. Delridge Supportive. I'm on the board as well as Renette. Ariana couldn't be here today because her mother died, unfortunately. And
Bear with us, tell us to speak louder. We're not professional speakers of any sort, so let us know.
so when we started out trying to build a co-op in the neighborhood,
The winter of 2009, Galena actually, we'll give you a little history, but Galena put out a request, anyone in the neighborhood interested in bringing healthy food to the neighborhood, and I was definitely interested in that. I have a growing family, and that's a big priority for me, so I went to the meeting and we found out over the course of a few neighborhood public meetings that other people were also interested in finding healthy food in the neighborhood. The affordability was a huge issue, so that's why a co-op seems to became our focus.
so we did a lot of work asking people what they specifically wanted in a grocery store, and that influenced the project that we eventually did. A lot of people mentioned they wanted a mobile market, so we had a stand for 4 weeks at 4 different locations for 4 days a week, and we basically accepted and solicited donations from local food producers, like backyard growers in the Delridge neighborhood, and got donations from local businesses and from farms in the Puget Sound and Pacific Northwest. And then we redistributed that food to people for free, because this was funded by a grant from Seattle Department of Neighborhoods. So the goal was really to show how we can all cooperate to provide food and make sure that everybody has access, rather than actually sell food. So we gave it away, and we asked in a survey in 7 different languages, the languages that represent the ones that are present in Delridge. We asked those questions right there, and we found that, yeah, people generally tended to want access to foods. And the numbers represented there, the largest bars are in the 500 range, so we had a lot of answers to our survey. So we decided that it was time to incorporate and try to raise some money. And the produce, the tote bags that we've been giving away toward the end of our mobile market were very popular. So we decided to, after we'd given away all those, we decided to buy some of our own and try to make money off of them.
We also started consulting with the Northwest Cooperative Development
Northwest Cooperative Development
Center. I was really seeing. And they have started the process of guiding us. We are a priority in the region with this group. We're actually on their yearly plan. We're like #1. They're very excited about us, and they've been giving us some really great ideas and advice for starting our business, from growing it from small to a full co-op grocery store.
And just in the last 6 months or so, we've been working with the Highland Community College Start Zone program, which is designed to help small businesses like ours get off on the right foot by doing feasibility studies and business plans. So we've been working with them for a few months, and we're going to continue to work with them to develop a business plan.
Our first step, her advice from the NWCDC, was to start small and grow, because none of us had any money to do this on our own, and it was a struggle to create a lot of excitement and get hundreds of people to give us their money right off the bat. So we started a buyers club, and we learned from this buyers club about purchasing wholesale and developing relationships with farmers, and how important it is to make sure that farmers are getting their needs met and making money, as well as us getting affordable prices for ourselves. So we were progressing through our plan with the buyers club.
Right, we were starting small, but then someone mentioned us on the West Seattle Blogging Connection with DESC. And people seemed pretty excited about the idea of us being on the ground floor of this building. So we decided to contact DESC and see what was going on there. And we found out that it would actually be a really equitable arrangement, possibly more than equitable. It would actually save us a lot of money and allow us to get started sooner, because building a store from the ground up is very expensive, and they've offered to furnish it for us via a private donation. We don't have a formalized business plan yet, but we have been playing with numbers quite a bit over the years. We've been doing this for 3 years. So this is our simplified business plan. If you want to talk to us more about how you think things should run, or whether you disagree with numbers like that, please feel free to come to our meeting that we're having. Our next meeting is on the 16th of April. It's a Monday.
Third Monday, I believe.
The third Monday of the month. It's usually at Pearl's. Oh, we're doing it at Delridge. Right, sorry. I've usually been having via computer into meetings. So.
All right. We know we probably have some questions to answer, and we wanted to start answering a few questions to start, because I know we don't have a lot of time. We can add to a little more as we go. Are there any questions right now about the? I know there were some. Yes.
Just how many people are currently in the buyers club?
How many people are in the buyers club? Let's see. It went like this throughout the course of the buyers club. Started over the course of the last year.
Okay. How about like an average for?
Right. And right now we're kind of on a little hiatus because of the season. It went on a little lull. So our largest number was, say, about 20. We're at 20 people, and our smallest number was a real strong 4. You know, real diehards. And it was a really great learning experience, because people had to share roles and go pick up the produce, bring it here, price it out, pay.
And then I have a follow-up. Just the question I asked Bree is about what's the reach out to the population that don't currently eat vegetables, which is, I think, pretty large, sadly. But do you have any outreach to that community?
Actually,
Go ahead.
so we actually started doing. We did a beef order. We're going towards fish orders. The grocery store itself will sell everything from fruits, vegetables, to roots, legumes, nuts, meats, dairy, eggs, cheese, some grains like buckwheat, a lot of bulk.
And we also plan to carry a very small portion of household needs that are a little more maybe environmentally friendly, or something that you can't find at the convenience stores.
Great, thank you.
Just that we are really looking forward to getting this started. We have 2 years to finalize our feasibility study and business plan, and we think that's enough. But
Usually co-ops take about 2 years. A food co-op of our size would take about 2 years to get to this stage. We're a little out of order having a location first, which is actually somewhat of a time saver, but also throws a wrench into things. So we have to be a little more creative with our advisors and with our time.
But if we're going to move forward with the feasibility or business plan based on this model with the DESC building, we do need as much time as possible. So we appreciate a positive answer from
store for a family that uses food stamps as their only source of
The
income.
produce cooperative, the grocery store that we're talking about is not going to be a buyer's club. Anybody who you see on the street will be able to walk in the door and buy any of the groceries. You'll need a membership. You can become a member if you want to vote on the issues. If you want to decide how the store is going to be run, you can become a member. There will be some discounts for members, but that won't be egregious.
And also, it's been our priority from the beginning to find a way to accept SNAP, right? Is that what it's called, SNAP? Yeah. And when we did the Buyers Club, because we accessed the West Hill Farmers Market as our farmers, we were able to pay for produce. We had at least 2 people on the Buyers Club who used SNAP exclusively to buy their fruits and vegetables.
But are you asking how people will be able to get involved in the Buyers Club this spring that we're going to be doing?
No, I just want to have a really clear understanding of how the produce crop will be accessible to all people, and also the whole idea of cooperative is new to some people, and just quite frankly, for a better line of word, so some people might sound bougie. So I just want to get an understanding of what would make the Buyers Club sexy or whatever to everybody.
We're actually the grocery store.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the Buyers Club
is doing it.
So, we obviously have a very green ideology, but we are planning on hiring from the neighborhood, and we're going to make one of the precepts of hiring that person know the languages that are spoken in Delridge. Hopefully, we're going to try to do that. If we can't find people, of course, we want to do that. But we do want the staff of the cooperative to be representative of the neighborhood.
Speaking of representative, in terms of the actual produce you sell, I'm interested in, are you planning on offering foods that are specific to, various immigrant groups?
That's definitely something that we decided to prepare. And we've already, in the beginning stages, we got advice from people about what we could carry, but we'll want to revisit that now that we're actually getting, or hopefully that we're getting somewhere.
As we have in the past, we've attended community events like the Delridge Days and various festivals, and we would like to continue to do that and ask people what they want through that, and reach out and hopefully get numbers that way. Also, I've asked Olivia to help me with that sort of thing, give me advice from time to time, and we just have to keep trying to do better. That's all.
To go back to what Philby asked too about co-ops in general, we did include some information about co-ops in the back of our information sheet. It's really crappy printing, but it comes from the cooperative grocers information network. You can find it online. It's kind of our Bible sort of developing co-ops, and a priority of a co-op is to be the surplus of profit from the operations. It says belongs to the members and they control how it be distributed. That also gives a co-op an advantage in a situation that's unique to Delridge, because we can take that surplus of profit that we hope will eventually exist and use it to make the actual cost of the items less, and not just where in some neighborhoods they would take it back into their pockets. We would force it into put it in our bylaws and make it part of the actual co-op that the prices are lower, because we're not going after the same type of a profit that a private business would be.
And I'm actually really excited that I have the opportunity to ask a question like this. But a concern that I have is about Martin's Way, which just opened. And I know that they are, as of this week, last I talked to him, was going to be having some fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. So I'm not sure exactly what question I have, but I wouldn't want either one of you guys to fail, or worse, both of you fail, because you're in the same market space. space. Do you have any plans or have you talked to him?
I've reached out and we responded to each other. It was a very busy evening, so we just have plans to talk again and just seek out what we can do about the situation. He mentioned how great his situation will be for us because he'll have 2 years of research done for us and see how it goes. And he did say he's responsible for what a neighborhood needs. So his situation may change, is what he said at one point. And I'm not going to put words into his mouth, but he seemed to think it would be complimentary and didn't seem concerned, which I would think would.
Especially because he seems to be wanting to focus on deli items and healthy, pre-prepared items, whereas we're going to be offering more sort of ingredients. So I imagine that he might want us to source his produce for him or something like that. And I don't think that we should ever try to not do something because we're afraid that there will be too much of something in the area. I want us to give it a try.
In terms of the building feasibility study, what's that? What can you talk to me more about what that entails?
Ariana is the one who was working with Start Zone the most, and she's not here right now. But if you want to try.
Well, let's see what I can say so far about it is that we're in the process of trying to figure out the feasibility plan, but we don't have anything to present to you. If that's what you're asking for, any numbers.
I don't know about numbers, I just sort of, I don't know how to do a feasibility study, so I don't know exactly.
Oh, we don't do the feasibility study?
Okay.
This is something that we have to raise funds to work with. Well, we'll work with Start Zone, and they'll help us to do the parts we can do. And then there is the Northwest Cooperative Development Center. That's part of what they do, is the feasibility studies for people in our situation. So we need to raise the funds to have them do something more technical. And they would research, like, for example, how many units can you expect to sell in your neighborhood on any given month, and how much that would generate an income. She did, at one point, she did kind of like a, back of the envelope type thing with us, right? And she sketched out the ideas of how much it would cost to run a store, and had us reference some other people's studies that I've checked out. And that was kind of what they would do. How much the store would cost, and how much a neighborhood could expect to bring in based on my reference information. I'm really excited that I don't have to do it, but also intimidated because it's an expensive process. It's quite expensive, which is the reason we don't have it completed yet, because we have no funds to reach to accomplish that yet. But at the time, before we were approached by the community, and we were keyed into this DESC location, we were starting the Fires Club, planning to move to maybe a mobile market or a small stand on the side of the road or a back of a truck or something, and keep making money until we had the money to pay this feasibility study. So this kind of cart before the horse, but we think it's an intriguing challenge.
How are you gonna, so you were using the Buyers Club to make money to get the feasibility study?
Not the Buyers Club, that was just to create awareness and to create more people excited about it, and also for us to learn about wholesale.
And retail.
So how are you going to be making money, or how are you making money, or going to establish?
Now that we've changed our focus a bit?
Right.
Well, fundraising through all sorts of exciting events.
First, we need to know how much money we have to raise.
Okay.
And in order to know that, we have to know that we are doing this storefront project. And then we'll know how much we have to raise, and we'll know what kinds of fundraising we have to do. There's a lot of different models that you can use for your.
As well as selling memberships, and it's real common with co-op development in different communities to sell memberships before the co-ops actually open. And I want to look into that a little more because I imagine some people might be hesitant to buy a membership to something that doesn't exist. But it happens all over the country. So, actually,
we're incorporated, we have a business.
But they can't go shopping yet, right? So I want to find out, and that's what our next step is to find out a membership drive is going to be going throughout all the other steps that are going on. The membership drive is a constant.
So, and membership would get you cheaper prices in the store and investment in.
Not necessarily
It's not
cheaper prices, there's
Okay.
a lot of different options, and actually, that sort of thing is what's voted on by members.
And what's the idea of what
Membership is-
what's the benefit of being a
You're an
member?
owner. It's not like you're a member of a gym. It's
Right.
like you're an owner of the grocery store.
So there are different options, like, whether or not you're a member, you could volunteer one day and get $30 for the free produce. Or you could get a coupon twice a month for 5% off your order, or 10% off your order. Or you could vote on the issues, like what kind of benefit you get. Actually, we like the idea of returning profits to members. So you buy a $100 membership, and when you want to return your membership and you move out of the neighborhood or whatever, you get your $100 back. But during all the years that you are a member, at the end of the year, we calculate how much profit we made. We subtract the amount that we have to spend to upkeep the store or to do any nonprofit related activities we have to do, like giving away food to the food bank and that sort of thing. And we take the rest and we split it up between all the members. So like with REI, if you guys have had memberships there, you could get a few dollars back at the end of the year, $1,500.
Respect to how much you spend.
I think there are several examples of what REI is a good example. Credit unions, that they're by being a member of the credit union, you own the credit union, and by that structure, you get better service and hopefully lower price of products and services. And I think that's how I envision this from my conversations with Lena the last couple of years.
Yeah, I saw that you had a plan on one of your slides, I think. Yeah. Would you be able to just talk in a little bit more depth about all your ideas for the space and
The
the
floor
floor plan? Yeah. Yeah. So this is not what we're hoping will be the final model. We're hoping that we'll have just sort of more space in the. Okay. So this right here is intended to be a meeting room / kitchen demonstration room. So we're intending that because we're going to have different sort of like weird vegetables like cactus or whatever in the. You can tell I don't eat cactus, right? So we want to be able to have people from the community come and give free classes about how to prepare this produce and how to eat, healthy foods. Like kale soup is delicious and nobody knows about it. And kale's really good for you. So that's what we want to do there. And it's also going to be our boardroom and a place to have meetings, hopefully. But I hope we have more members than that space will allow for. And then lots of produce, and then some dry goods somewhere, and also frozen meat and fresh meat and eggs and dairy. Do you want to help me out with this?
Yeah, and then there'd also be the storage area, and there's the delivery entrance back here. I think that's something that a lot of you was kind of mentioned in our group, was concerns about delivery entrance, and it was talked about delivery on from this side of the building. So we should go straight into this location here. This is one thing we've been working on is is the entrance and exit. And we're taking some advice from the architects as well.
Flippy, you have a question?
Actually, I think my question was really the same ones in three. I was going to say, what is so different about the Delridge Supportive Cooperative than other stores like Martin Lake? And one example is the classroom space in the building. And maybe that's a benefit that a member might have, that they could use that.
We actually talked about having it for a community option, for we would have to, more meeting space, for small meeting space for a community, to access, because we could use more in the neighborhood, a free meeting space. But that is a decision that would be made by the membership, how it will be accessed, but that's one of our visions.
I think my primary concern about is price. I think prices in this place are going to make or break a business. Prices in terms of what things cost. You know, I mean, organic groceries are more expensive. And I'm really, you know, I'm beyond the co-op benefit part of reducing costs. What are other ways that you're going to be able to keep costs down?
So one of the things that we're hoping will come from this is that TPC will serve as an urban food hub. And what we want to do is purchase produce from backyard growers and here in Delridge. A lot of people grow produce in their gardens and would like to make some extra money off of it. We hope this will be an economy boost for the neighborhood. There are pamphlets that you can fill out when you're a gardener that say you don't use certain kinds of fertilizers or pesticides. And once you fill that out, then you are not certified as organic. But you can allow yourself the label of organic, just not USDA organic. That's the kind of thing that we want to encourage people to do, and we want to buy that produce so that we can provide pesticide-free produce that's also cheap. And we've also talked about other things like purchasing seconds, that you can make really great juice out of fruit that has insect bites or rotten parts. And that probably sounds really gross to a lot of you, but that's one of the things that you can do. I would buy that food and I would eat it, and I'd be happy to. And there's a lot of different things that you can do like that. And purchasing locally, of course, is the most important part of keeping prices down.
Bill, I'm curious as to your conversations with them in terms of making the prices affordable for your own residents. And has that come up and how you know?
It hasn't come up.
Yeah.
But I understand the concern affordability. I tend to agree with you. I think in this neighborhood, affordability of the product is going to be a pretty key ingredient in business sales.
Yeah.
But I would imagine our residents would shop.
I hope so.
One of the things that was attractive to me about Delridge Produce Co-op is that there are a lot of things attractive. First of all, it's a community-oriented, socially conscious startup, which DESC was at one time. And DESC had the assistance of a lot of different organizations that ensured our viability. I think one of the ways we can pay back that debt is by assisting other organizations that are important to the neighborhood. But it's clear that this is a neighborhood that lacks for fresh produce, and these folks have an option for you, I think. And I think given a fair amount of thought, I'm impressed with the connectivity they have with Highline and also the produce, the co-op association in the city of Seattle that they visited Madison Market and PCC, but they're really taking this very seriously.
That's true.
I mean, it's a risk. Any startup is a risk. It's a risk to us. I think it came up in one meeting that the last thing we want to see is a vacant store. Well, let me tell you, that is absolutely the last thing DESC wants to see. So one of the ways that we thought we could ease the burden for these good folks is to provide some assistance from them, not just a reasonable rent structure, but some assistance from them with things like architectural design and maybe some assistance with the fixtures, actually furnishing the facility for them. That allows them not to be saddled with a huge debt doesn't have one there. So they're free at that time with financial constraint on maybe more focused on establishing a business foothold in this neighborhood.
Patrick had a question.
Yeah, so in regards to the design, so who came up with the design of the store? And I mean, I'm just guessing, I mean, I don't know really much about business, but I'm going to guess as part of the feasibility study will probably be basically the square footage of the store and the resources, and like if it's going to be like an on-demand, like you run out of butter, you can shipment the next day. And then the second thing is, I know grocery stores and especially produce have a lot of waste. It's just part of the business, whether it's packaging and cardboarding, because things come in bundles. And in knowing about the building design, how will that be accommodated? I mean, maybe that's a little bit too far down the road, but I mean, it is a part of the discussion is waste management. So.
Well, waste management will be taken care of by the compost that will be collected.
The city's program.
The city's compost, yeah.
But we have not determined how, yet about storage of that or anything, that is part of it on.
Okay.
The two.
And then with the design, how was the design for this design come up with? Was it just you guys like drawing on a piece of paper, or did you work with someone to get this design?
Actually, we drew a little bit in paint, and then we handed it off to the DESC architects, and then they come up with this, and then we drew a little bit more in paint, and we're waiting to see what they come up with after that. So it's a collaboration.
Okay, great.
And it's also something from the beginning with DPC, we've always invited the public and our neighbors to come and help us create what we are and make us what we are. So questions like your question about waste, that's something we're going to reach out to everyone.
Oh, right.
Because we are.
No, I just want to
I think, I'm not sure to add on to that, because we were at the design review, and although I very well could be unclear about this, well, it wasn't clear that the retail space had access to where the dumpsters would be, or the city yards. So I mean, I think Patrick's wondering a little bit about that conversation of how the retail space connects with the buildings.
Well, the dumpsters are behind the building, and the delivery entrance right here leads to a sidewalk that goes up the side of the building to the back of the alley where the compost will be.
This is the north end of the building?
Actually, the building's oriented
North is in the direction
sort of
of the air.
Okay.
Yeah, it is the north end.
So there's I didn't realize it was a walkway between the existing and the new building.
Okay, so as we wind down here, so if as people walk out tonight, they say, gee, I wish I would have asked Leanne a question, how can members of the community reach out?
Well, number one is come to our meeting. The third Monday of our new meeting times, third Monday of we're holding a bit of conference, but not done, which is
And if you're unsure about when the next meeting is, there's a calendar on our website, Delridge Produce Co-op at just Delridge Produce Co-op.
And then you can also email us at delridgeproducecoop@gmail.com.
And you can get that information on the website.
Or you can look Lena.
Yes,
personally.
and actually my phone number is on the website, it is, so. Hi, buddy.
Sure.
Have you guys thought at all about parking issues yet, or is that something that's part of the feasibility study?
We had feedback from the neighborhood over the last couple of years saying that they wanted something that would increase walkability, something that would bring people out of their cars and into this, walking to. So in the beginning, the idea has been walkability, but the parking issue, as far as the reality that there will be parking, that is something that we have to still address.
I guess part of my question
And that's
is,
something that will impact it.
because I would love to think about it as a walkable solution. And I just came back from San Francisco where I was reminded how much I love the fact that you can just walk to any corner and get what you need. And I would love to see that here so much. I guess part of my question was, do you feel like that would be enough business to sustain your projects?
Well, the nice thing about this business is, the business plan is that it's scalable. so affordable, actually, that we can scale back hours that we're open and scale back the number of employees that we have so that depending on how much demand there is, we can adjust. So the other thing is we're going to try to have a bike rack. So we're hoping that'll be a good thing.
I have a question. Bill, you're talking about assisting with startup, and sounds like private donations involved with initial
Let's
history.
just say it's DESC money.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm thinking back to our conversation from last week. What exactly would be the business relationship between DESC and the co-op?
We would be the landlord.
Pardon?
We would be the landlord.
Okay.
We would execute a lease with these folks. And I presume it would be a conventional lease. There would probably be some things in there that we would insist not occurs, such as subletting. Without our approval, we would probably retain approval control over signage. And although we want signs, we want the neighborhood to be aware that the co-op that should ultimately be a commercial tenant, but we would want the neighborhood to be aware it's there. Off the top of my head, Jane, that's all I can think of.
You're independently incorporated?
Yes.
Okay. I recall some discussion that was shared in that one.
There was
a
a,
fiscal sponsor conversation.
Yeah.
It's only been explored. I mean, explored.
It's-
you know.
Would there be a need for it?
actually in the,
It was about startup. It was because of the idea that when you're doing a startup, when you're doing your fundraising, you can have a fiscal sponsor so people can maybe do donations that are tax deductible or in-kind donations, right?
yeah, but we've since found through research that it's likely that that arrangement would not be good for anything other than furnishing the store. And then we then donate the furnishings back to the DESC and rent them as part of our rent of the store. So upon opening our doors, the monetary relationship would be.
Frankly, Jane,
And then also-
those kind of pieces haven't been worked out. When we started, for the first 5 years of DESC's existence, we were operating this program of church council for Seattle. And we've talked a little bit about this, but there's been no resolution of what that relationship might look like. I have to get board approval, obviously.
And it wouldn't last beyond the fundraising stage.
There was talk of that way, if you were to say the first property ceased to exist while there was a grocery in the building, they could really, lease it out as a grocery because they would own some of the grocery inside the location. So it might be a little bit safe for the community to invest in something that was not only banking on our success, but was.
But we would also want us to be able to break their relationship with you if it went badly, for example. So, not that that's going to happen. You know, what you're describing today, I think is reassuring to me.
Well, the way we use this work out, we have to be concerned about our lives.
Is that Mike?
Do you have time for, you got,
We've got about 5 more minutes on this
Okay.
section.
first off, thank you for the energy you guys have put into this. It's, I can only imagine what it's been like. I was one of the original people that started, or was involved with First Co-Housing community in the city of Seattle, and it took a lot of energy, a lot of time. I no longer live there. It's actually one of the ones in West Seattle, but I get it. However, this bandwidth issue, we're already kind of maxed out in Delridge at large because of the socioeconomic issues that we have. And when I look at the bullet point here in the consultant's report, it's just one consultant's report, and I get where people have visions and dreams, and I'm all for that. But when it says Delridge is not a site for a startup operator without adequate experience or cash reserves, it makes my heart pound. And I know that it's of your opinion or your belief that, you know, it's better to throw more at the wall than and have something stick than not throw anything at the wall. There's a lot being thrown at the wall right now, and we've seen small operators, even a small Middle Eastern grocery store that was right across the street from the library, fail. So many years back, it was in the little green, yeah, go do the program. Yeah, and so I actually really think that it will harm the neighborhood's efforts in the long run to get a stable, small to medium-sized grocer of some sort. If we do kind of have things come, go, and collapse, right now we've got the Super 24 trying to do the produce. We've got the Delridge Deli Mart down here, Andover selling produce. We've got the new M&M Market on Orchard and Delridge. We've got Martin's Way. The population, the demographics makes me nervous, and I'm really worried about the bandwidth. I know you guys are wanting people to attend. I remember talking to Galene about this right when she first started, like, honey, good luck. I wish you the best, but I'm worried, and I was like kind of cautioning her because there's just the time.
Well, Mike, if you want us to succeed, you should come be on our board.
That's my thing. It's like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done.
And we're only.
There's a lot of people that are kind of at that level. They're done. They're maxed out because we don't get paid, and you guys don't get paid, and you gotta earn money. That's all.
That's right. And we only will succeed if people actually decide, you know what, I'm going to switch my priorities and I am going to give my time to this. Because for me, growing up this direction of Delridge, and now being a homeowner this direction of Delridge, I want something to change. So that's what I've rearranged my time to do, and we hope other people will too. And you're right, we won't succeed if there's not enough people involved in a co-op. We're not like a private business where we're banking on our own money. So
I understand.
And as far as, I think you did allude for a minute to the part in the report about having experience.
Right.
Right. And I did want to comment out that we did in our presentation that a manager of the store is not me and it's not her. There would be someone that would be hired and paid as a salaried employee who would have that experience. It wouldn't be something that we would not be running that store. So.
It wasn't an indictment of you guys. It's just, I think it's important to really get this stuff out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I also want to address what you said about that Delridge can't handle failure. And I'd like to point out that Martin's Way is making a go of it. They're starting out small. And so we're not the only grocery store that's trying it out in Delridge. The Stockbox is about to try too. The many options that will be available will prove that we're not the only ones. You know, Delridge doesn't survive or fail just based on one business. I think we're a strong community, and I think that it will help us to see energy going in that direction.
Okay, a couple more questions.
Okay.
The first is, I want you guys to be successful because I won't have access to groceries, which would be wonderful. But I'm wondering if DESC has a backup plan in case they're not able to raise the money that they need to get things going. You know, this feasibility study, and at what, is there some time deadline at which you'll say they're not going to be able to make it happen? What are we going to do? You know what I mean? How are you going to make a determination?
DESC would be the decision maker to pull the plug on this operation. I mean, we're not really getting any kind of income. I mean, the rent was more. You had $700 up there for rent, and I was sort of confused, like, where did that number come from?
Well, I think
I don't even know that.
we had discussed 10% of gross profit.
Yeah, I do not want you to be burdened by it. So the point I'm trying to make to the question is, I don't think we would be the entity that would make the decision that they can't do.
Not that they can't be, but
I think
what if they decided that they couldn't make a go of it? How would you proceed in terms of getting another
Well, I think the
business?
first thing I would do is come back to this community and say, who else would you like to try? Who else would you want DESC to try to recruit as a commercial tenant. And I know that's a challenge because I'm looking at Brandon Court and the vacancies at Brandon Court. And you guys wanted NC 240 here, that calls for commercial storefronts. What was your vision? Or what might you should, you know, that would be my first alternative. And if the neighborhood didn't have a clear one, you get a commercial real estate broker and try to get whoever can afford to do it. If somebody's got a better suggestion for me about that, I'd like to hear it. But our first priority for this commercial space is to put some commercial entity in that commercial property that the neighborhood thinks is beneficial to it.
And then what kind of rent will you envision?
I think for rent, we would offer essentially a similar rent structure. I won't commit to the fixtures and doing the tenant improvements, but the rent can be next to nothing.
So how could it fail?
Well, I think
it's competing
what
with
you've heard
rent
these
game.
folks talk about, Mike talk about bandwidth. It's a concern that I have. I have to be candid. And any startup is faced with that challenge. And I think Renetta's answer to that, to Mike, was spot on. Don't let it fail, community. Shop there, get involved with it. Do everything you possibly can to make sure that it becomes a viable concern in your neighborhood. It's providing a benefit that I think everybody agrees is needed. And, so let's all work together to make sure that it does succeed.
You said you had a couple
The last thing I want to do is go to a commercial real estate broker and just get anybody to come in here.
You said you had a couple of questions.
Yeah, I also was interested in terms of, it's that node is a work in progress. And it doesn't just involve working on a single site. It requires sort of infrastructure improvements that are going to be supporting a business, right? And so I know the DESC, which sort of was a part of this visioning, is trying to actively work to seek out improvements to that district. And I'm curious if you have plans to be part of that.
I am part of that.
Okay. Awesome. Okay.
Yes.
But that is
It's
okay.
of huge interest to me
Yes.
is that area as well, and so definitely we have plans to have sort of figuring out how we can be supportive.
Well, I have more of a something to say, surprise, rather than a question, which is there's been some concern about, expressed to me, about the neighborhood being selecting a particular business. I think what I've heard from neighbors is they want us to articulate, not that we're, condoning a particular business, but that we can confirm that there is a need. We've heard from these ladies, and, it sounds like a good deal, but I think that I'm myself just being responsive to what I've heard, and I'm not ready to sort of give an up and down vote in terms of this particular vendor. I do think that the co-op is a good idea. I'm going to reserve the fact that I think prices are the number one issue for you guys. For myself, I watch my grocery budget like a hawk, and I would love to be able to buy groceries in the store, but it's too expensive.
This is what we started this whole thing was for that reason,
Because you guys do the same thing.
And I can't afford to spend more than $200 a month on food.
That's always the focus.
We're working with professionals who know how to design business plans, so if they tell us we can't do it, then we won't, but
We always come down to the bottom line when we're working with these people and talking about our business plan or everything we're doing. We always come down to the bottom line of what is this going to cost the individual person in the store? How much is this going to cost for us to sell? How much are we going to have to sell an apple for? we always come back to that. So that's one thing that is always a priority, and we don't want to do this. We've said it a million times over, we want to do this, but that's not where we're going. We're not trying to recreate PCC, not a PCC, but not, right, some crisis of places.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you too for your presentation today. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is just kind of a general discussion amongst the committee members about how do you want the committee to prioritize the future agenda items. So I had sent out an email a week or so ago and just kind of asked everybody to kind of think about, kind of what your top 3 items would be to start the discussion. We'll open it up to how y'all feel that we, as a group, should prioritize the agenda items for upcoming meetings. So, ideas?
What did you hear back from everyone?
You were the only one that I heard back from in a written format. I've had conversations with other folks, but you're the only one that actually replied. So I just want to kind of lay out that this is where do we want to start? So it's our committee. So what are the we all have heard over the last several meetings from a lot of people, and so kind of what has bubbled to the top for everybody individually that we can start working.
Well, I think as the immediate neighbor liaison, the thing that I hear most is concerns about personal safety, and then the number one way that manifests itself that I've heard is with regards to drug activity. There's some unease about the mental illness aspect of the population, but really overwhelmingly it's more about the drug activity because this neighborhood has a history of struggling with that. And I think it's a very real and valid concern that we're 66 people going to fight drugs. Also the sex offender issue, that I feel like that's, if I understand correctly, that's been resolved. That's my one.
Can we go back to personal safety? I'd like to drill down on that for just a second. Sure. So on personal safety, you kind of mentioned drugs, but are you also talking about people doing crime on one another, beyond the drugs? Because I just want to make sure that when we talk about personal safety,
what exactly do I mean?
Yeah, that we that we cover the whole topic. If there's more there that we want to talk about.
So I guess to speak a little bit more about how I understand where people are concerned is that with a concentration of people who are likely to be seeking drugs, there's a concern that that's going to increase the amount of drug activity and drug dealing, which tends to bring with it vandalism, violence, theft. And I think some of that concern is about the specific residents' behavior, but I think a lot of the concern is about the people who will be servicing the population, who are probably more able to do things like have a turf war and, that might be overstating the fact, but it's not just about the residents of DESC. And part of the concern about that is that, Bill, I appreciate that you're saying, if there's a problem with our tenants, let us know and we'll take care of it. But I feel like there is some concern that there are tendrils that extend from that won't have to do with the behavior of your clients necessarily, but of a shift in that population. So yeah.
And so, yeah, no, that's great, you know, because I guess what I'm thinking about is, okay, so how do we have that discussion? You know, who, what, you know, and I'm sure that Bill and Nicole can help us, but also other folks at the table, you know, what other resources do we as a committee want to bring together to address this issue? So that's kind of what I'm looking for too, is we can, you know, we're going to identify these issues, but at the same time, we identify the issues. So from your point of view, you know, who would you feel comfortable? And I don't mean to pick on you. You're just the one that brought up the subject. Is how, you know, what other resources would you feel comfortable hearing from that you think would help the committee address this or any issue? You know, so we need to think about that as well. You know, that because we can sit here and talk about it, but I think that part of what we as a committee want to do is to bring in other resources to help us understand these issues and come to a way of dealing with them.
So I had two ideas. Hopefully there will be more. One would be whomever is the appropriate person for the Seattle Police Department to come and speak to us. The other was something that came out of the design review process, which I guess there's, and Tanya, maybe you can. Yeah, that's with the safety group design.
Right.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so we can get somebody like a Kay Godfrey from the Seattle neighborhood that.
So maybe even if that's something that happens separate from this committee, maybe whoever is responsible for doing that can come and talk to us about what happens in that review.
But they could, and I think they could also look at it on a broader scope, not just the DESC building itself, but the surrounding, you know, how you can make the entire neighborhood or whatever. So that's something we need to talk about.
Because I don't think that's the activity is going to happen on that property. I think it's going to be in the So
okay, those are great. Other ideas? And thanks for letting us drill down.
Well, I think it's going to be really helpful for neighbors to hear is for DESC to really articulate its screening process in great detail. So I know that you have the you sort of determine it's escaping me. There's this, you sort of rate people in terms of, right, and I know that that's sort of been picked up on by other agencies, and so it's, you know, it's had some success. It would be nice to hear from one of the folks who actually does that, so we can understand how they're evaluating potential residents. In particular, I think one of the folks' concerns is this, there's a real belief that there's a correlation between mental illness and acting out, you know, like people potentially being aggressive. And I think that concerns folks a lot because of the proximity to schools, the daycares. And so I'd really like to hear from DESC about, you know, do you have a way of sort of determining someone's potential for aggressiveness based on past behavior, and how do you treat that? Are those folks, you know, if you probably can answer these questions and, you know, where I'm trying to go. And so, yeah, really just how do you use that? What are the background checks that you do?
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
So you're thinking that we would just want to hear from DESC's perspective, or would we also want to hear how a a sister organization handles it. So to see if, is the way DESC is doing this the same, is this the same model that others use, or do you want to just hear from the DESC perspective?
I don't necessarily have an opinion. I know that the UW did a study, they did some kind of an evaluation of the tool. I think that would obviously be very fascinating, but also somewhat, it could get really detailed and maybe not serve the purpose of what we're attempting to do.
Could I offer a suggestion? Get someone from the King County Division of Mental Health and Chemical Dependency Treatment Services, Omni Bell is the director. He's done a fair amount of research around the relationship between severe and persistent psychiatric disorders and aggressive violent behavior. I'm sure he would be willing to talk to this group.
I do think specifically, though, I think folks do want to hear from DESC about its specific screening process. So I think it would be worthwhile to have someone who actually, and you know, from what I've read about it, the folks who do the interviews are really the ones who know. And they've got unique knowledge about how they do it, and they're obviously very, very experienced. So I think it would be valuable to have somebody who does those do it. I also
And then after we have that discussion, then we might want to carry it further. Okay?
I think both of those tracks are good.
I think the other thing we'd like to hear about is, you know, what's the tenant agreement for in terms of how they're gonna, I know that you've said in the past that there's, you know, there's restrictions about what they can do. And so I think we'd like to hear about what those are. And we'd also like to hear about the consequences of, you know, breaking that agreement. You know, what does DESC do? What are its procedures in terms of, you know, if they've got somebody who's, you know, persistently out of the neighborhood participating in criminal activity, what is DESC going to do? I mean, obviously, how we determine it, but also.
Okay, we can do that.
And then I think, I'm going to keep going here. I know folks like Mike have been around for a long time and have a knowledge of the drug problem as it's been addressed. You know, what are the hot spots? What are ways that DESC and the neighborhood can be proactive to really prevent a ramping up of this? You know, I think the neighborhood and DESC have a shared interest in this problem, and I'm certainly one of the folks who's interested in taking part in improving this. I mean, we certainly don't want it to get worse, but I think there's still room for it to get better than it is. And so maybe if we could, I could certainly try and find a neighborhood person who's been around a long time and could really have a lot of insight into the work we're doing to try and prevent.
Jean, you want to bring up your idea?
Yeah, I think the things I suggested to you as I recall, were basically, it seems really clear that safety is probably the loudest concern coming from the community in all of its aspects. So I think it would be really helpful for us to talk about the drug issue, and we may need another meeting or two to talk about other aspects of safety as well, including things like traffic safety, which is a concern of mine, crossing the street and those kinds of things. So I want to break that up into a couple of sessions and call this meeting. So obviously the screening process is also a concern. I'd love to hear from staff. I also, I would be really interested in hearing from residents too, in terms of what is their experience living with each other, to give us maybe just as people who live and work nearby a better feel for what we can expect in terms of their interactions and things like this. So, two other topics that would be helpful to me would be, I still would really feel I would benefit from just kind of a timeline overview of what does DESC have to do between now and opening day, and what are the steps in your process, and maybe we can match our agendas with the things that you're working on. Like when you get ready to hire staff, maybe we can talk about staff. When you get ready to turn your lights on, and we talk about safety in the room, those kinds of things. But that would be just give me sort of a sense. And I'm thinking maybe some of the neighbors around here, so that would be helpful to them in terms of feeling a little more control of what's going on and what they can expect to be happening. So that might be just a topic. And the last one that I suggest is, and it's a concern to my staff and probably other institutions, is talking about community preparedness and how DESC might be able to help us as business owners, as people who work nearby, people at the school, which will be reopening this fall, to help us learn, what to expect, what to watch for, how to relate effectively with staff and with residents at DESC, who undoubtedly will be our customers and our neighbors. So I think that could be helpful almost as a training session for works in the school. Things for us to know about the population that we'll serve.
Olivia, do you have anything that you want to?
No, I echo what she said about getting a timeline of, because I was trying to think of what would I like to know, but if I know what the timeline is for what you got.
Well, I think that safety is a number one concern. I think one of the conversations now is related to, the master use permits getting finalized. And I think one of the folks in the audience asked that maybe we can, see what the final plans are before they're submitted. Because I know folks have indicated their paint color choice is something that they're interested in having some input on. And I think that's sort of reasonable decision for folks to be, for their input to be.
The exterior of the building is pretty much just a granite design review process. So I don't think there's much wiggle room for selecting colors for the exterior of the building. Those are all presented and approved for design review. And our master use permit is contingent on following the recommendations of design review. So we can certainly make the plans available before the master use permit, but basically the plans are what the community saw at design review.
So they approved the plan, they didn't provide any additional feedback about.
No, they provided some additional feedback that was basically addressing Parie's concern about the side yard and water runoff containment strategies and vegetation. I'm sorry, that's the only thing I can think of. There were 2 or 3 others.
I don't know.
They were relatively small.
Okay. I know that articulation on the rear, I wasn't there, so I just kind of, like you, was trying to recall. Articulation on the back of the building was something that came up, and I don't know if that's going to change
I
the
think
plans for
there
that.
was I think one of the recommendations also was to enhance vegetation on the back of the building. They were satisfied with the articulation.
Okay.
It's an 11-foot setback from the property line, and then the building, there's even a setback from the porch to the building. There's modulation from that, so it's not just a big brick wall. But I'm certain Kathy will provide elevations that the architects have. I don't know if they produced the elevations or incorporate the design package recommendations. They will soon. I just have to re-familiarize myself with that development trajectory. We've worked out a kind of timeline for the development of the project, and it's predicated on the idea that we will be under construction in the fall of this year, and it will open sometime in the fall, late fall, early June of 2013. We start hiring staff about a month in advance. We like to have all the staff on board a month in advance of opening. And so I think that's a little late in this committee's deliberations to present you with the staff and all. Yeah, that's documents that this committee has already been provided, but there may, I need to refresh my memory. The real construction schedule will get developed when we select a general contractor.
Yeah, I'm not asking to answer that question now. I'm just thinking in terms of sort of framing for the neighborhood, what we can expect to be happening from hiring the contractor to hiring.
Well, I think, and we can certainly provide it as the development schedule becomes more refined and there's more certainty in it. We can certainly provide this committee with updates. I guess the point that I was focused on, Jane, with your description, I would think this committee would like to see a detailed staffing plan that we have much sooner than when we're going to be ready to start hiring.
It's somewhat outlined in this.
Yeah, it's kind of outlined in one of the documents I know that's a part of our community.
I guess my thought was just to see that sort of milestone and would help us identify topics that could
Yeah,
be
no,
solved.
I agree. There's not a lot that's going to happen
For a long time.
for a long time.
We had something similar. Got that one? No, the one that was pretty detailed, but it was like 6 point.
Oh, is that the one?
Yeah, did we get something like that?
Is that the one that Nicole said?
Yeah.
We need it for each house?
Bring that back to this committee, although I do think a lot of the activity that went on that is stuff that happened before construction and then sort of the big last.
Well, something like that from where we are now.
Except in bigger package.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's some differences there.
I think it's worthwhile getting into a little bit more, get a little bit of their skeleton of, how this is all been run, so we have an idea. And then it'll sort of help us figure out, I think it would be helpful to have to revisit this conversation at our next meeting.
Okay, so,
I think there's a comment with that, I was hoping it's appropriate now. I did raise it at the beginning, and I just, I think I feel confused. I appreciate what you just shared, Bill, that you have to follow the recommendations of the design board.
can't hear you.
I know, there's a lot of noise. I feel like there are a number of lingering design-related type questions or issues that didn't get to be explored in the design process, and I know you have to follow the design report recommendations, but I would like to ask as a community member that this committee has an opportunity to look at the concerns that neighbors, concerns or ideas that neighbors offered in that process that didn't get to be fully looked at because that process is limited. So I just want to put that out there as I feel like that is, for one example, there's a lot of talk about the alley and concerns about the alley usage. And I fully appreciate that that may not fall to DESC to resolve, but I would love to see this committee look at that, acknowledge it, and maybe give neighbors resources of who we need to contact in other departments in the city to talk about the alley, or I don't know, because all of that is a little bit beyond me, but it's an issue that's come up many, many times. That's just one example. I noted earlier about really making sure that business is highlighted. At the design meeting, we talked about maybe having awnings over the business doors. The design board didn't go down that low, so can we still talk about those kinds of things? That's all. I hate to see that be a closed door when there just may be room for opportunities to have more conversation about the project that's not going against what the design board already recommended for your building.
Well, what I was hoping to do was, I kind of picked up on 6 bullet points. So I picked up on personal safety, the DESC screening process, the tenant agreement, the timeline overdue from now until the building opens, the community preparedness, and then the SEPTED, which I would kind of put the alley safety piece. Well, alley safety is a little too specific, but just the alley piece. And so I picked up on those 6 bullet points. And so where do we as a committee want to start? Because I have a feeling that once we, as we delve into each of these, that there's potentially going to be, more that the committee wants to learn about, and, and then we'll can prioritize from there. But I just kind of wanted to go through this exercise so that we could get us started.
Can I ask my sister to share this? Because if we're not going to have time to talk about this anymore, I'd like to have more discussion of the business commercial aspects.
So the business aspect of the...
Yeah, I mean, just how was that decision going to be made, what are the criteria?
Okay.
We had a presentation, but we haven't really talked about it.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to expand on last time, just general design related issues, as opposed to like specific application. Things that are maybe more detailed from design reviews.
Okay.
That type of lighting.
Okay. So based upon what we've talked about for the last about 25 minutes, is there kind of a feeling as to which topic we would like to talk about at our next meeting on April the 12th? I mean, do we want to start with the screening process?
Well, I'd really be more comfortable if we could get a timeline first, a little even more tighter than it. I mean, you guys have done a good job of providing them over time, but I do think I'd feel more comfortable if we could have a little bit more time to figure out how we're going to organize these meetings and ways that we can.
So for the April 12th meeting, concentrate on the timeline and further fleshing out.
I think that would be exactly. So we're not having, so we can, maybe rather than have a meeting that's just devoted to the screening, we can have better articulated themes. And so a meeting can have a theme, and then we address, we talk about different things that are related to that theme.
I was just trying to kind of narrow it down a little bit in case we wanted to bring in some other resources to bring us information, is the reason I was going there.
Yeah, so I think maybe our next one is just sort of do some project management on these topics. I mean, I hate to have whole meetings just about planning other meetings, but a lot of these, it sounds like we need to figure out who to talk to and maybe sort of figure out a timeline. Like we couldn't do on April 12th, we wouldn't be able to do like safety and drug issues, probably line all those people up. So maybe just figuring out, since we're kind of at the end of the evening now.
So, in the interest of everybody's time, as it is 8:30, I would like to go ahead and so that people can plan their schedules and get it. We've got April the 12th is the next date. I'd like to go ahead and see if we could plan the next meeting day after that as well. So I'd like to propose either April the 30th, May the 1st, May the 7th, or May the 8th. So I'm thinking of, trying to keep it every 2 weeks, and we also, at our last meeting, had talked about not necessarily having them all on the same night, moving it around a little bit, so, April the 30th, May the 1st, May the 7th, or May the 8th.
Okay, so Monday or Tuesday in the first 2 weeks. Okay, I can't be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was wondering if you could put it on your agenda for your next meeting to vote on whether or not you would be willing to accept Delridge Supportive Cooperative in this development space. Please.
The timeline here is in terms of getting the commercial tenant identified. If it's these folks, it's good.
I think it is DESC's decision about who they want to select to be in the space. I appreciate getting the information, and I think neighbors will want to kind of keep getting information about how they're proceeding forward. But in terms of up or downing this particular tenant, I don't know, do you need us to do that? And if so, why?
Well, we've sort of been out there that we don't select a tenant that's acceptable to the neighborhood. So that's what I'm looking for, is accept an expression of acceptability. And at the end of the day, it is our decision, but I don't want to do that without neighborhood input. And I thought this committee was the logical place to get that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I appreciate what you said, Jeanette. I really do. I know it's sort of hard to say yes or no, especially when they're sitting right in the face. And so it may be an appropriate thing to talk about at the next meeting.
Well, I guess I actually would like to have some more discussion about this because the presentation was really interesting, and I think from the comments from other people, what I would hope is maybe as a part group, we could maybe line out some criteria that are important to the community that might help you make your decision and also feel like you have community support for the decision that you do finally make. You know, I mean, we could talk about some of the things that came up today, like something that brings good to the community, something that's supportable with the, the resources of the movement. I mean, we'd have to talk about what those criteria are a little bit more specifically that we'd like you to take into consideration.
Okay, well, I want to put that on the agenda.
On the next agenda.
And I think that way it'll give us an opportunity to talk to other folks that maybe weren't able to be here tonight and solicit their input.
And now everyone has this information, which will be on below.
Okay.
I guess, let me, this is just to play the devil's advocate. What if we said no? I mean, I don't want to be
Would you like an honest answer to that?
I mean, yes.
You'd like an honest answer to that? This is a very important question, and we at DPC have been working on this for 3 years, and we think that if we don't have the support of the community, if you decide to vote no, we shouldn't be in that space, then we will disband and discontinue our efforts in the community. So it's up to you.
I'm not saying that's what I was saying. I'm just trying to discern what kind of decision am I making?
But it depends on the reasons as well. If the community were to say, we want you in another location, or something like that, that could be.
I don't think it's our place to vote on a particular tenant.
It sounds like a good idea. I do have a
I think Jenny's proposal is reasonable course. So it is the committee off the road saying yes or no.
But also, let's be whether we care about feasibility.
Right.
The likelihood that this business is going to survive.
So if we can set aside 15 or so minutes at the next meeting to talk about this, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't want to keep making you come back for that. Keep saying, oh, well, maybe we'll make a decision, maybe.
So, date. April 30th. Maybe
April 30th.
Yeah, so we can't do
So
the 7th.
I'll be trying. It's a big deal, but
Okay, so maybe first obviously I have a question as well, if you're having surgery that day. Okay, so how about the 7th or the 8th?
I like the 7th. 7th, it's so close.
The 7th? Okay, so the 7th, and so is 6:30, did that work for everybody tonight? A lot better than 6 o'clock? There's people did look very when they came in the door tonight. Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to make a request for everyone who's attended to make sure, if you can, to sign in, just for our minutes so we know who's here. And also, if you don't mind helping by just holding up your chair and leaning against the wall, help us with that.
All right, so we have basically firmed up most of the agenda. We'll get that out on the same timeline as we did for this meeting. We will have the minutes out on the same timeline. We will also reissue the minutes from our March 6th meeting with the added language that Annette brought forward. And our next meeting will be on April the 12th at 6:30, and the following meeting will be on May the 7th at 6:30. And I assume we're going to